how does Omnism actually work? I mean, do we just take this all on faith? The idea that all these different belief systems and worldviews all have the same value? Or is there actually a rationale to it? Well, to me, I think there is. When I was in my late teens and I was having all my theological and philosophical discussions with my friends who study this sort of thing, I started coming to some interesting conclusions. After all, for us, and this is not all Christians, but I think a lot of Christians have a tendency towards this type of thinking, feel that the whole idea is to come up with a certain sort of combination of beliefs that will get you to heaven. You sort of have to believe the right things. And the Bible is this sort of book to be decoded, and you have to figure it out. And some people believe that whatever they read is just the meaning, and some people ponder over it, and we study the Greek and study the Hebrew and go all the way through it. But what I found interesting after a while was that regardless of the fact that we all seemed to be intelligent people, and we were all essentially studying the same thing, we would often come to vastly different conclusions, depending on our personalities. And I think that most people, certainly myself, have a tendency to think that people should come to the same conclusion. I mean, they should, right? If you're an intelligent person and you give me a bit of evidence and someone else a bit of evidence, and we both see the same evidence, we should draw the same conclusion. But we don't. I mean, why is it that Christians all over the world, of all these different denominations, all worship the same God? They read the same Bible, but they wind up believing different things. And one denomination will tend to think that all other denominations maybe not are going to hell, but certainly are less correct than them. And they might very possibly think they're all going to hell. But whatever the case, I really started wondering about this. I mean, it simply seemed illogical that for some reason I just happened to be born in, the greatest country in the world, born into the greatest religion in the world, and of course born into the one denomination that happened to be right. I mean, it's possible. I could just be that lucky, or maybe there was something more to it. I mean, how is it that everybody can see all this evidence or all of these writings, all of these holy writs, and come to all these different conclusions? They must be wrong. And that just didn't seem logical to me. And especially when you considered that your salvation depended on it. Going to heaven depended on it being right. So why is it that Christians all over the world were kneeling down saying, "God, show me the way," and he was only showing the right way to us? I know, didn't seem logical. And when I started studying other religions, it was, first of all, easy for me to get into Judaism. Judaism, after all, was the beginning of Christianity. Jesus was just a Jewish heretic. And what we now call Christianity was just sort of a cult within Judaism for a long time, until they were eventually, well, kicked out, really, and spread to the world. But Judaism was very easy to study. I could sort of take what they said verbatim and say, okay, this is something I can relate to as a Christian. And from there I got into Kabbalah, and because of Kabbalah I could sort of go over to the Eastern side of things, to Buddhism and Taoism, and say, okay, these things jive. I can kind of trust Kabbalah because it's Jewish, and so the fact that they say similar things, of course in different ways, but similar things to the mystics in the East, that kind of makes sense to me. And then it was very easy to sort of segue over and start studying Islam, because they have the same God. It's still the God of Abraham, Ibrahim, whatever. It's the same God. So all three of those religions just call him something different. Now, if you start taking this concept out a little bit wider, it's not really hard to believe that whatever is up there, or out there, or in there, or however you want to look at it, and of course at this point, God to me is extremely broad. I've described it in the past as being sort of a hyper-pantheism. You believe that God is literally everything. Everything that is, everything that isn't, the entire reality, everything outside of reality. This massive, the only word I can come up with is concept. I don't even like to call God a being or anything that puts too much of a shape to he, she, it. But if you were to go with this hypothesis that there is some force, something out there, then it's not very difficult to believe that we would discover he, she, it through all sorts of different ways. God is revealed to Jesus Christ and Abraham and Buddha and all these different prophets and teachers. Over the years, they somehow connect with this, whatever it is. And of course, they all call him something different, and they all translate that concept through their culture and who they are personally. But you're going to get very different pictures no matter what. You would just have to. Jesus Christ was only a couple thousand years ago. I remember it being very difficult for me to believe that Jesus Christ came down 2,000 years ago to save everyone in the world and make me think, well, what do we do before him? Were all the Jews going to hell before Jesus Christ? That didn't make a whole lot of sense. Some people try to explain that with this idea that, well, they went to Abraham's breast and all these different ideas. But it just seemed like it was a real problem for me. What were we doing before the Jews? What was the truth back then? Obviously, Adam and Eve weren't Jewish, right? I mean, they existed long before the Jews existed. I'm sure they might take issue with that in some ways. But the point being that we have religions significantly older than Judaism and Christianity. So what were we doing back then? It seemed more logical to me at some point that God, whatever it is, was revealing itself, and you could look at it as God revealing itself, or you could simply look at it as us noticing. To me, God doesn't have to be found, he just has to be noticed. He's everywhere. You can find it in your backyard, you can find it out in the universe, you can find it across the sea. It's literally everywhere. So it's not hard to imagine that we would all have been discovering different angles of he, she, it. This is also why science to me is every bit as much a reality as any other religion, because science does try to understand the universe in a particular way. It tries to understand what the universe is made of and how it works mechanically and how we work, how our bodies work, how our brains work, all of that. Whereas all of those religions, of course, try to understand how God works and how morality works, and philosophy studies reality in all its levels. Now, it's very easy also to understand why, when you're within the system, in other words, when you're a Christian or a Buddhist or a Hindu or whatever, it's very easy to see how that might sound impossible. After all, you have someone like Jesus Christ saying, well, this is the way. This is my way. This is it. You have to follow my way. On the other hand, if you are outside the system looking in on all of those systems, it's not hard to see where, if God revealed he, she, itself to this individual, like Jesus Christ, what did you really expect Jesus to do? Say, I'm bringing you the truth. Of course, this is only an angle of the truth. It's only a version of the truth. And of course, all other truths are essentially correct if you were to follow them correctly. But this is a really good truth, and I'd like everyone to follow me. I mean, can you possibly imagine that working? Religion does tend to be taken to people in a certain way. You will almost always find that individuals within a church are significantly more intelligent in their studies than what they get from the pulpit. Why? Because you do sort of have to dumb things down when you're talking to a giant group of people. And that's just as true of Jesus Christ and everyone else. So when Jesus Christ, to me, to me when Jesus Christ says something like, "This is the way, this is the only way." I think he's right. Of course it is the only way, but the way that he's talking about is the exact same way that everyone else is talking about. I mean, it's not this weird, bizarre combination of beliefs that you have to believe in. Jesus Christ really said you have to love other people. You have to love them. You have to feed the sick. You have to feed the poor. You have to treat other people the way you want to be treated. Ultimately, it is all about love and peace and treating people well. And it's not about all these minuscule little things. I mean, Jesus, when he came, was really trying to sort of reform a system that he felt had become too legalistic. It had started becoming about the laws and not about the principles, and he was trying to drag people back to the principles. And that's how Christianity happened. And of course, from there, Judaism evolved in its own way. But no matter who is revealed to by God or discovers God, or however you want to look at it, they are obviously going to feel that the way they see it is the only way or the perfect way. And it's not going to work terribly well if they try to tell you, well, everyone is right, even though they may in certain ways. You know, there are a lot of people like Buddha who seemed very aware that they were simply discovering a way, not the only way. And to a great extent, I think that's simply how we take it. I think that's how we take what Jesus Christ says. And it may, in fact, simply be how his disciples took what he was saying. And I don't think that is much of a stretch. If you really take a bird's eye view and you try and realize that everybody is intelligent, if you come, and to me that is in many ways what Omnism truly is. It's simply the realization that we're all intelligent, that we're all trying to find the truth, and that we all have the ability to do so, and that it isn't some secret knowledge or simple luck that we happen to be born in the place where this religion or that religion was discovered, any more than, you know, people who believe in science think, oh man, thank goodness, you know, I have science. Or thank goodness I'm an atheist, or what have you. We are all discovering the same truths with different labels, different concepts, different ways of looking at it. And so to me, I think that's the best way I can say that Omnism really works. It is simply the realization that everything is a translation of whatever is out there. If that isn't too crazy and convoluted. I will try to break that down much more in future videos. For now, I'm the Urban Omnist, and I really do appreciate all you guys giving your support. And remember guys, none of this works without you. So, subscribe to our channel, like us on Facebook and Twitter, and above all, don't forget to send me those questions.